Welcome to Make Your Own Fun. I'm here with Neal Jones. He, as far as I know, runs the longest running horror themed podcast, Without Your Head, which is fantastic. And he is also the producer of the Once and Future Smash, which is really tearing it up right now on the festival circuit. So, first of all, congratulations for that. Like, holy cow.
Thank
You
you. It's been
spec,
very
yeah,
exciting. It was a
yeah.
year is waiting for it to finish. We started it before everything shut down, and but yeah, it's been doing really well. I didn't know how if people would even accept it, but I'm glad that people have are showing it and that people are liking it.
Awesome. Well, I know you've done it a million times, but I guess for the people that are going to be watching this, could you maybe go through the premise a little bit of the film? Because I kind of feel like it's a really fresh, kind of interesting thing that you don't really see too often.
Yeah, no, I haven't really talked about that too much because it's usually Michael gets to tell
Yeah,
everyone that. But
I've seen some of those interviews.
right. So so now that's played for a little while, we'll say it's a mockumentary. So it's a mockumentary about two actors from 1970 who both take credit for the lead role in the 1970 film End Zone 2, which we also restored and then they play back to back. And it's set in the modern day when they're both booked at a film festival. And so it's part a documentary about film festival culture, about these two actors both taking credit for the role, and they also want the to play the character in the new reboot, remake, reimagining, whatever that is. And it's also a documentary about the actual 1970 film End Zone 2. So it's kind of a combination of all these things.
That's fantastic. And I just love the idea of these older guys kind of just, I mean, it's just a comedy goldmine idea of these guys carrying this grudge of like, going to a convention and kind of like, how dare you, how dare me, how dare you? And it's just, there's so much to mine there. So congratulations for that. I guess uh if you could, I did speak to Sophia about it a little bit, but um if you could speak a little bit about like how it kind of came together and where the idea kind of maybe came from. And I don't know if you guys had just maybe had a conversation and it maybe came from that.
Yeah, what happened was Michael Epstein and I were talking in Facebook Messenger about two guests who had on the show who may or may not both be in the Once and Future Smash, who I like both guys. I'm friends with both guys, but both guys, I wouldn't say they like hate each other, but they don't. They both have different versions of who really played an actual slasher in the 80s and who should get more credit than the other. And it's interesting because, like I said, I like both guys. I believe both guys, so it's kind of a weird conundrum there. And Michael's like, that would make a good idea for a movie, and I was like, yeah, it would. And then there's other cases like that. There's even going back to the Creature from the Black Lagoon, where Ben Chapman and Rico Browning. Now they both, are aware that they were both in it, but both kind of took more credit than the other. Ben Chapman played him on the land. Rico plays him in the water, and so they, from what I understand, they had a bit of a rival. So it's been an ongoing thing in the horror world, and so from there, to even think of making the movie, like we had to have a convention because there's no way we could recreate a convention like without spending a fortune. And so I was like, well, I'm friends with Eben who runs Mad Monster. He might let me do it. And so I asked him, and he was like, Neal, anyone else ask me? I'd be like, no, but yeah, you can do whatever you want. You can film there. You will even set up like a Q&A, and you can film with an actual audience. And I was like, okay. So I was like, well, this looks good. And then Michael was like, I think like two good leads for the role would be Bill Whedon and Michael St. Michael. And they knew Bill. I knew we both knew both, but I don't know if they knew. They might not have known Michael at that time, but they were more friendly with Bill Whedon than I was. Not that I wasn't friends with him, but they just knew him more and met him. And I was more friendly with Michael St. Michael. So they asked Bill, and he was on board. I asked Michael, and he was on board. And so I was like, oh, I guess this is all coming together, and it looks like it's going to happen. And then from there, for the like the horror icons in the movie, we refer to the talking heads. Um, the majority of them were just people that I became friends with doing the podcast. Some like I would say like friends with I've hung out with, and some are friendly with. And so I just started asking a lot of people, and again, a lot of them were like, "I'm not really sure what this is," but like they trusted me, which is make me feel good. And so they were like, "Okay, let's do this." And everything started to roll, and then and everything was shut down for COVID.
Oh, oh, that's a bummer. But it's interesting though that you bring up the conceit about the double actors, playing the same role because that is something that carries on to this day.
Yeah.
And I don't think I'm really pulling the wool over people's eyes when I tell them popular show The Mandalorian. Pedro Pascal is pretty much just doing voiceover, and whenever they take the helmet off, I cannot remember the other two gentlemen, but more of the fight choreography is a martial arts expert guy, and then you've got this Wild West rodeo stunt actor guy doing all the kind of the gun and he has like a spear and some
Mm-hmm.
other weapons he uses like hand-to-hand combat and shooting and stuff. That's another guy. And so the jokes in those interviews that I've seen Pedro do, where he's just like taking the helmet off, and he's like, "Yeah, I'm the guy that okay, take the helmet off, Pedro, and look like you're really out of breath, and just sell it to the camera. Okay, helmet back on. Let's get the other guy."
Right.
And I'm
Yeah, I
wondering,
mean, a lot of the slashers were the same, especially if it was like a slasher where they get unmasked at some point, where it would be a different person in the unmasked scene as because they would normally get like a stunt guy to play the slashers so they could wield the weapons and take the
throw them
bumps
out
and
of
everything.
windows and stuff. Yeah.
Right, right.
Oh man, that's great. So I am kind of curious though, with the podcast, because did it initially start as just audio only?
Yeah, not we didn't do start doing video till I think 2 years ago when Trista joined the show. It was during COVID. I
Great.
had not well, how it started. So I someone asked me to come on their show, and they were like, "We do it with Zoom," and I actually didn't know what Zoom was, and I was like, "Okay." So they had me download the Zoom, which is fine, but I was like, I don't know what this is, and so I don't want to. I don't like videos where like it's someone's unmade bed in the background or something. That's always annoying to me. So I was like, I have to set something up because I normally would just do the audio show in my bedroom. I was like, I don't want that. So I set some stuff up. And long story short, I did all this stuff, and then they only used the audio, and I was like, why did I do all this for?
What a waste.
Right. So then I just had Zoom on my computer, and then in the this was like pre-lockdown, and then during lockdown, I just thought, well, and then everyone started doing Zoom after that, but I wasn't the first to do Zoom, but I was like, why not do it this way? I think it's a lot better. It's fun to you can see people. I think it's a lot better if you have a lot of people on because I always try even with audio to include everybody, and it's harder if you just hear them, you might forget they're there, but when you see
Right.
everybody it's easier like, well, I want to make sure everyone gets to talk. And I think it's just more fun too that everyone can see each other and interact.
Oh, I think so too. And there's so much lost with just I've noticed, and maybe you've noticed this too with your own show, that I've noticed that since I started using Zoom and doing video interviews, I'm bringing my hands
Oh
more into
yeah,
the
I'm the same
frame,
way.
and I was not
I
doing
talk with
that
my hands all the
guy
time now. I
before.
thought maybe it was people think me because I'm half Italian, but it's because of the Zoom. Otherwise, I don't want to just be motionless.
Right, right. Well, and it's like you're doing the more of the pantomime, and you're doing this, and you're even laughing more with your hands, and it's just It's just a much more of a visual
Right.
medium.
You
But
don't want to just yeah, you don't want to see people to watch it and you're just sitting there like you don't want to, not that I would be bored, but you might
oh
look
yeah.
like you're bored. Yeah.
So your love of horror goes way back. I know that you said one of your initial I think uh gifts was probably the VHS of Creepshow, right? I think
Yeah,
we
that's
talked
the
about that
first.
before.
I still have it up here. That's the first VHS my mom bought me. And that was back in the '80s when they cost like 65 or $70. So,
Oh my God.
people might think, oh, you can get that for $1 or something at the thrift store, but yeah, they're expensive at the time, and it's in the old clamshell, so it looks cool. The tape itself though is actually worn out. It can't play, it doesn't play anymore, but I don't think I have a working VCR anyway. But the clamshell looks cool, so I put up there. Plus, like I said, it was the first one my mom bought me, so it has sentimental value.
That actually dovetails into another question. I've just started being brave enough to ask people. I think we're kind of in a similar age bracket, which is all of our lives up until a few years ago were, collectors. We want new versions of movies that were on VHS that are DVD and then Blu-ray with, additional footage added in, director's cuts, long lost deleted scenes, behind the scenes, making ofs and things like that. And I feel like all of that content has just gone by the wayside because with streaming, it's just the movie.
Yeah,
So I guess the question is, do you see yourself still as a collector of new physical media? Because I kind
I
of stopped.
yeah, it's weird because I like to plug that. And I tell people, oh, get the, but I'm guilty of not even if I do get something, I a lot of times it'll stay in the package and I'll never open it. And then after a while, it's like, well, why do I buy this? And there's times like if I have an interview or something, it's like, oh, I know I have that movie. I'll watch it before, but I was like, by the time I go get it and then get it out of the Blu-ray, I might as well just look if it's streaming, and 95% of the time it is. And I know that's like bad probably, but I mean it is way easier and also takes up way less space is a big thing.
It's true. It's true. In fact, I have a couple friends that and it blew my mind the first thing when I went over their place, but when they did this is they downloaded all the music that they wanted and filed it away, and then they started using their CDs as cup coasters. And I gotta
Right,
tell you, like even getting a drink from somebody and you have the
right,
cup and you're like, oh man, I just can't. I can't put my cup down on Dark Side of the Moon
yeah,
Joshua Tree. This is or Nevermind or whatever it was. It was just I like, can I just use a paper towel or napkin? No, no, no. I use
yeah.
them all the time. They're scratched. They're old. We never like
Well, you
okay.
think I'd be the same way, but then you think about that's probably cheaper than buying like a coaster, and it looks cool. So I guess but yeah, it
Yeah,
would. It just feels wrong.
like you've probably been to some restaurants where that are like movie theme restaurants where they have clips or cutouts from magazines under the
Yeah,
glass of the table. And
yeah,
I have seen some places starting to use the actual inserts from
right.
DVDs and do that too. And at first you're gonna set your cup down and you're like, it's just that thing. I think it's
Yeah,
our age group where we're like, oh man, that's a piece of art. I don't want to just put my beer or my soda can on it. It's just
yeah. And
that
I've been
gut
places where they have
thing.
like cassette tapes along the wall, like glued to the wall, and all that. It's weird when you first think about it, but I
I
guess it's better than just throwing away if you are using them for something. I don't know.
do you remember like the first horror movie I guess it would be cassette or a VHS or a DVD there was like a special feature or a director's cut that was
Oh,
like a big
interesting.
deal where you were like, "Oh, this is something new. I need to get this."
Because that is something I miss about the physical is I do like the behind the scenes are very definitely cool, but my favorite was listening to the commentary tracks. That's something I do miss. And from what I understand, there's one streaming site. I forget what it might be Arrow, I think might have actually. They might still do that where
Okay.
you can listen to it on the streaming, which is interesting. I might be wrong with Bet Arrow, but I know it's one of them. But I can't remember the first one I got. It probably wasn't until DVD because I don't think many VHS tapes had that. I know Beyond the Mat, which is a wrestling VHS, it was like an extended cut. on the VHS tape. But I can't remember what the first one I would have gotten though. I remember because I love Herschel Walker. I'm not Herschel Walker. I do not love Herschel Walker. Herschel Gordon Lewis. Well, Herschel Walker, he talks about vampires and werewolves too. But her H.G. Lewis, he his commentary tracks are some of my favorites because I love his movies, even though I'll admit they're not particularly great. But if you listen to his commentary, you'll think you just watch like The Godfather of horror movies or something because
Oh
it's like
yeah.
he talks about being like grand. And so then I would buy even movies of his like his like weird like lesbian biker movies that I really am not into, but I would buy them just to listen to the commentary track. And I don't know if a lot of them if I ever watched them without the commentary.
Oh
I would
yeah.
just listen to them with
You
the
turn it
commentary.
off.
Yeah.
I remember a situation where a buddy of mine were hanging out, and all of a sudden we saw I think he got up to go to the kitchen or something, and a commercial came on for like for a limited time only at Best Buy. This is how long ago this was. Like there's a new version of Army of Darkness wrapped in a rubber Book of the Dead. And then they have a clip, and it was so classic, Bruce Campbell, and he's just like, "That's right, screwheads. Get this new version. It has 4 less seconds of footage." And I was like, "Oh, I gotta have it." And he was like, "Holy shit, I'll get my keys." And we get over there, and we get to the Best Buy, and we watch it, and we were like, pretty much the same movie. But then we watched it with the Raimi and Campbell
Right.
commentary. I don't know. I don't know what. I think my buddy has it, but they just ripped on each other the entire time, and I love it. I love hearing Bruce Campbell being like, "I went to school with this jackass, and I'm standing knee deep in the mud, and he's just over there laughing with his brother, going like, oh, we know what we're gonna do to Bruce next."
That's awesome.
You come
That
over
might
here,
be
stand in the mud, you
that
know?
might be one of the first. I remember buying the Book of the Dead for both 1 and 2 because I have them up in my room where they come in like the foam rubber Book of the
Yeah,
Dead.
yeah.
The weirdest one's not horror, but I remember buying the Planet of the Apes box set, and it came with
Oh, it was in the
at the time
head?
all of them. Yeah, and it's really cool, but at the same time, like it's this giant head with a little tiny box at the bottom to put the CDs, and it was like, oh, this is a whole bunch of waste of space, but it's a very cool box.
But they just tell like the commercials would always just sell you on the cool factor, plus limited time only, plus
Mm,
they're they know what audience they're marketing to. Where you're like, oh,
yeah.
um,
Now, just real quick, because you mentioned Sam Raimi and Evil Dead. Recently, a few months ago, I guess, they showed all three of the Evil Dead 2, and Army of Darkness outside by a cabin in the woods, and that was a very cool experience.
oh man,
So
that's
it's not a home
awesome.
video thing, but you go and see it on
Yeah,
the
well,
big
just
screen
it's
outside.
kind of
And
like a few years ago. I took my daughter to Dana Point, and they had a screening in the park of Jaws,
mhm.
but right at it's just a natural hill going down right to the ocean. So you're listening to it with the sound of the waves.
Oh,
It
that's
just
wild.
really elevated the creepy factor. Um, what was I gonna say? Oh, yeah, they're making another Evil Dead. It's coming
Yeah, I
out
know.
next
After
year.
saying they would never do it, and then yeah, a new one. I'm excited
And
though.
no, not. I mean, maybe a cameo, but I know Bruce
Oh, he
Campbell,
won't be
so
Ash. Yeah. But
Evil
I think
Dead
he's like a
Rising or
producer or
something.
something.
But so I guess tell me, how did you make the segue, I guess, from working on the podcast to being involved in your own projects and other films? And it sounds like it was just a natural extension of that.
Yeah, so I guess so I was doing the podcast for a long time, and that was just audio. The first one's 2005, but really we started doing it full time 2006. And then I did some videos here and there just for fun, like short little videos I would make. I think I was the first, not the first Krampus, but before Krampus really became a household. Like not a lot of people knew who Krampus was. I did a video as Krampus in 2010, I think. Um, but that was just for fun stuff to put on YouTube. And then when I started doing festivals, a lot of the press people don't go to like the after parties, which is fine. You do everyone do. But I would do that and hang out with the people, and people would, like you and stuff. And so Michael Epstein and Sophia became friends with Sophia Cassiola, who I ended up making the feature with. And I got sick 4 or 5 years ago, and well, a few times. Once I had to get part of my colon removed, which was terrible. I don't recommend people doing that. But I had emergency surgery. I was dying, and so they removed 14 inches of my colon. I woke up with a colostomy bag, and that was a bad, very very bad times. And then so the left side of my body was weak from a lot of the surgeries there, and so then like I had all these hernias, like, and when they so I had to get this big extensive surgery to repair. They said it was over a dozen hernias, and part of the side effect was that is that I would not have a belly button anymore. And Michael was like, well, and it's like a really I was on a lot of pain medicine and it was a bad time, but Michael was like, oh, why don't we make a documentary about this? And I thought he meant like a real documentary, but he meant like make like a mockumentary about the loss of my
Documentary, yeah.
belly button, which really helped me a lot because I think using humor it definitely helps deal with like trauma and bad things, at least for me anyway. So this was not I was still on pain medicine and stuff. It was at Boston Underground Film Festival. And so we filmed the this mockumentary while I stayed with them. They were selling their house in the area. And so we filmed the mockumentary there. And at first I thought it was going to be a real thing, and then he explained to me what it was. And so I played it totally straight, but it's to me it's very funny. People liked it. So from there, they like doing that with me. That played festivals and done well. It's won some awards I have up here. And Umbilicus Desidero is the name of that one. And so from there, they asked me to come out and do a movie that they were making, um, and play a character. I can't talk too much about this character, but you may see him in some stuff. And he was like kind of the comic relief of the movie. And so when we did Umbilicus, like there was no script. I just ad libbed all this stuff, and I think that's my strength, probably from doing the podcast all those years. And so that was very funny. And then so this character, he was scripted, but I added a lot of stuff to it and became more of the movie, and people liked it. And they also asked me to do BTS, and I was like, yeah, sure. And then I was like, I don't know what that is, so I went and Googled it, and I was like, oh, behind the scenes, I could do that. And then that's where I met Trista, was on that movie. And Trista was like, she's like, yeah, just lie. Anytime someone asks you to do something, that's the motto in Hollywood. Just lie and say, yeah, I can do that. And then look it up after. So we did that. And then the other movie came about, the Once in Future Smash. And so that's how I got involved. I don't know. It's been a fun experience. And I've had bit parts and some things since then. Not all of them come out, but the Once in Future Smash, is producer on, and not just like nothing gets anyone who donates to a a crowdfunding thing and gets a producer credit. That's great that you help out, but I have found out now that a lot of people assume that's what I did when they hear I'm a producer. And it is a little disheartening. I was like, no, I was actually on the production since the beginning of the movie. Um, but anyway, it's been a very cool experience, and hopefully I'll do some more stuff in the future.
That's awesome. I had a similar situation happen with some stuff that I worked on over the last couple of years. Not I didn't get credit, and then there was some stuff where like you're saying, I helped out with some of the crowdfunding, even just a little bit, like 20, $50, whatever, and then you
Yeah,
get that associate producer credit. And I thought that's IMDb is putting that like right at the top by my name. So people were reaching out to me thinking I had lots of money, and I'm like, man,
I've experienced this now.
I live in a tiny apartment in Fullerton. I have like no money. Like, come on. So I had to go into IMDb and edit that. And, I just directed this short here last month. I'm like, okay, let me just put that up there. So it's like mainly writer so people can see that. But I took that producer stuff out. It's like, I'm thankful that people were nice enough to give me that
Yeah, yeah.
associate producer credit for their show or their film or their short. But I think that's false advertising in terms of, I don't live in a mansion in Beverly Hills and I don't, use $100 bills as toilet paper or anything. It's like,
Right. Yeah.
you know,
Yes. Yeah. Not here either. And I've had some people who want to. They say they want to collaborate, and then it ends up they just want me to fund something. I'm like, no, that's not.
yeah, yeah. It's like it's got to be a full on 50-50 or some kind of give and take there to make you feel like you're part of it.
Right. Right.
Um, so
Yeah.
can
By the way, Michael and Sophia and Aaron, who Barocas, who did the editing, we all worked on this movie for a long time. Michael wrote it, Sophia and Michael shot it, and so everyone was involved.
everyone's a great team. So
Yeah.
I guess let me know how you roped in Trista onto the show and how she got her nickname and everything like that. It's kind of fun.
Yeah, so it was Buffalo Dreams Fantastic Film Festival, which is a very long name. And so I was at that, and I saw the poster for her movie Echoes of Fear. And it was a really I thought it was an alien movie actually from the original poster. It's got like the monster, and they're doing something like this to her head, I think. And so I took a picture like as Tristan the movie, and I forget exactly how it looked. And then so I posted that on social media. And then the director was there, and he's like, "Hey, you're the guy who took that cool picture on Facebook." And I was like, "Oh yeah, yeah." And I'm like, "I'm looking forward to this movie." And so he was very cool, and so we started talking. And so from there, and I really liked the movie, which is good. That's always a problem at a festival if you actually really like the person, and then you're like, "Oh, I hope I like this movie," because you can't tell them like, "Man, that movie sucked," but you say, "Oh yeah, it was good." But anyway, but it ended up being very good, which I was happy because I really liked him, Brian Evan Bradley, and and so from there I had Brian on the podcast, and I had Trista on the podcast, and some other people from the movie. I interviewed Brian there in a video, and then I had Trista on the audio podcast, and we got along really well. Me, her, and my brother Troy, who does the show with us, and on the show, she was like, "You should come out to LA sometime. You can just stay with Michael and Sophia." And then we joked that like she just invited me to stay with Michael and Sophia,
Right, without them even knowing.
right? And then I ended up doing that, and
You're like knocking at the door, like Krista said it was
yeah,
cool.
Trista says it's all right. And, so, and then
But
I saw
knowing them, I'm sure they just open the door and let you right in.
exactly. He's very trusting. Maybe you should be trusting Trista. And so and so then I met her out in LA, and we did a movie together. And again, we got along very well and stayed in touch. And I think I had her back on the show. And then I was like, because we used to have three people on and off on. We almost always had three people. Troy and I. It started me, Troy, and John, and then Annabelle's on the show. There's some. It was always like a third coast, and so we both got along with Trista and thought, not only just got along with her, but she had a different like perspective, because she's an actor, and so I was like, "You want to start doing the show with us?" And she's like, "Yeah, I'd love that." And so yeah, so she just joined the show, and and then it was right during the shutdown, the lockdown, so she had a lot more extra time. So that was fun for her too. And then so on the show, I'm Nasty Neal, which was the name given to me by R.A. Mihailoff from Texas Chainsaw Part 3. And so then Troy is Terrible Troy, and then our old co-host John, we used to call Jittery John because there's not many good J names, so
Right.
he got Jittery. And so I was just like, well, how about Treacherous Tristan? She liked it, and so we went
That's
that way.
cool. That's
Yeah,
cool. I guess since you're kind of perfectly placed with all of your contacts there with the podcast, I guess that begs the question, have you thought about doing productions locally to where you are? And you're kind of a great facilitator. I just imagine you being able to kind of pull from different areas, like this person's a great cinematographer, this person's a director. I know all these actors and writers. So I was
yeah.
kind of curious if you thought about that.
That's interesting because I was actually even before these other movies. I didn't even think about, but I was making a documentary with Paul McElharney, who's from Ungovernable Films, and so he was making a new movie, and so I was doing the documentary, not really about the making of the movie, but it was actually more about the sacrifices that very low budget independent filmmakers go through. And so in the middle of that, I still have all the footage, but he quit making the movie and just quit making movies altogether. And so I have thought about going back and interviewing them now, like years later, because how we were doing that was I spent a day with each of the people involved. And I do think it would be interesting now to go back and see how their lives have changed since they stopped making movies,
Right.
and hopefully finishing that. But so I've done like some bit things in some local people's movies, but that would be nice to do because I do know a lot of local filmmakers who I really like, and I think they do really quality stuff. So that would be something I would like to do. I know Michael and Trista have pushed me to. I come up with a lot of silly ideas for movies, and they always push me to actually write them into scripts and not just talk about them. So maybe I will do this at some point.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, as we're under about like 9 minutes here, I did want to kind of pick your brain. And I think maybe we've kind of talked about this before, but I'm always for picking someone's brain, especially someone who's into horror films and someone who has seen as many films as you have and also worked on films. What are some cool death scene ideas that you haven't seen in a movie where you're like, maybe you're walking around the house with your cup of coffee, looking out the window, going like, "That would be cool. I've never seen that before."
Well, I can't say that because then like it would ruin if I'm going to write them in. But I do have an idea for a killer chef movie, and there's a lot of like, well, okay, one is death with a giant tenderizing like mallet, because the
That's
idea
cool.
would be that he goes and kills all the critics of who didn't like his food, and one of them was like they thought it was too tough, and then he would, then he kills that critic with a giant tenderizing mallet.
Well, I think maybe I told Trista these too, but maybe, and if I have, I don't think anybody's going to steal
And then
them.
they flatten them out so they're flat, like a Looney Tunes cartoon.
Right.
Yeah.
The horror comedy one I had is if there's like a bunch of friends and they're running down the street and they're trying to get away from a group of vampires, and then they turn down a street and then they come around a corner and there's a white picket fence. And they're like, "Over here!" And they go and they start kicking the pieces of the fence and they use those as the stakes.
Right.
And the
That would
joke would
work.
be the vampires are coming, and then they were like, "Oh God, there's so many of them. How many of these do we have? Oh man, at least like 30. Oh, then we're good."
Yeah, that would be good. They could
And
pick them
then
up and carry it, run with it, like a clothesline in between them. Yeah.
and then the more kind of like serious one, I think I told her was these if the vampires are kind of the good guys of the situation is they wake up that like and they're like there's two of them and they're tied to a buoy. They're sitting on top of a buoy in the ocean, and they've been each of them have been cut, so they're bleeding, and the blood's going into the water, and you see like shark fins kind of circling, and then in the distance they see the sun start to come up over the horizon. So they're vampires, they're strong, so they can break the ropes or the chains or whatever it is. But the dilemma is, it's like, well, in this story, I guess the vampires can't fly. So do they swim and try to outswim the sharks? Or if they do fly, like how fast can they get to the coast and find shelter before the sun comes up? So, and she was like, "Well, that kind of makes me sad." I'm like, "Well, maybe they're good vampires. Maybe
Right, right,
you
right.
root for them."
Well,
Maybe,
I think it's good to have empathy for the villain a lot of times. I think that
yeah,
makes the best villain.
yeah. And also, I've got other ideas too. Like you said, you don't want to throw them away, but like I've never seen anybody, either by a killer or whoever, like thrown through a window and then like land in a pool and then have somebody just in the pool, but on the far end of the pool, just like holding a drink, and they were just like, "Huh, could have taken the stairs."
Yeah.
That's more like horror comedy stuff.
Right, right.
And like a more serious one, I've never seen anybody fallen down stairs and then the stairs collapse and then be impaled by part of the broken stairs. Because it's
Hmm.
always like, you see like in the one with Emily Blunt, where she steps on the nail
Right, right.
coming down the stairs. Uh, that's okay. And then, or it's like the light gets turned off and then a knife or something comes up through the stairs or from the dark. But I've never seen it where it's like a trap where it's you take 2, 3 steps, like they're running down the stairs and then they just caves in and then the person, I don't know. I don't know if
Yeah.
I think about things too practically of like
No, I like it.
if somebody was, it's
I like
almost
impaling. Yeah.
like an R-rated Home Alone in the house.
Right, right. Yeah. That's what I was going through my mind actually. Which Violent Night is sort of like an R-rated
Oh,
home
I
alone.
haven't seen that. Is that good?
Oh, I loved it. I thought it was one of the best movies of the year. I thought it would be good, but it was even better than I expected it to be.
And David Harbour is like great in
Yeah,
everything.
he's very likable and he's perfectly cast in the movie.
Awesome. I literally just last night finally got around to watching X.
Oh yeah, that was really
And
this. I actually think this has been a really good year for horror movies.
oh yeah, and I did see part of your interview with the gentleman from Barbarian, which I thought that has to be one of the most original horror
Yeah.
scripts I've ever seen on
Mhm.
screen. I mean,
Yeah, and
it's
that
like
was a
one of
movie
those
I
things
think.
I can't tell any friends about.
Yeah,
You
that's
know,
why I
like,
hated to even
so
make a
much
banner for the movie.
trailers.
But
Just sit down and watch it because you're gonna think in the first 5 to 10 minutes it's one movie. It is not that.
mhm. I think even the first 40 minutes, you might think it's completely different.
Yeah, yeah. And I don't know if they're gonna do a sequel. I kind of hope they don't because it's really self-contained. But
Yeah, I agree. Like I like a movie where it's left up to you to like come up with how people got to where they are. And a lot of times when they show an origin, it never lives up to what you're thinking.
yeah, it's kind of like they did that spin-off of Donnie Darko, and I watched like 10 minutes of it, and turns
Yeah,
off
it's
it
not
was
good.
so bad. But as we're getting down to the wire here, I wanted you to just let people know where they can find you online.
Yeah, so the main website's withoutyourhead.com. And so you can just go look up Without Your Head anywhere. So YouTube, all your Spotify, iTunes. And then if you're into social media, Facebook, I am on Twitter. I don't really ever use it, but I'm primarily on Facebook. But you could look up that. And Instagram, I try to use more. I opened a TikTok, even though, I'll turn 47 in a few months, but I opened the TikTok, so and that actually has some views. So I put up like clips of interviews on there, but mostly it's on the website withoutyourhead.com, and then our YouTube channel is the live shows and all the videos. But you can also watch them on video now on Spotify.
Very cool. Very cool. So I know you're always working on stuff, and I just can't wait to see the next thing that you're going to work on. I
Thank you.
I try I try my best to get caught up with some of the interviews. Like I said, I did see a big chunk of the one with the gentleman from Barbarian, which that guy was hilarious.
Yeah, he's a really good guest, and I really like his music. If you look up his music, and he's just
Nice.
a very funny guy too.
And I see that you had quite a few people from Terrifier 2, which was one
Yeah,
of those movies that I'm just it gives us all like a shot of hope. Like,
I agree because I've been to festivals where there are a lot of people are very against the movie, and I think no, regardless of what if you personally like the movie or not, I think it's definitely good for independent filmmakers that it shows people that because low budget is a relative term, like a $10 million movie might be low budget, but that's still like a huge budget to anyone I know.
right.
But 250,000 is still pretty big. But the first one was made for like a small percentage of that. But anyway, it gives you hope. Hey, look, because our movie played festivals with Terrifier 2, and then it went on to be, it was originally to play like 3 days, and it went on for weeks.
Amazing. Well, I hate to cut this short, but we're wrapping it up here. I just wanted
I'm
to
very
say,
long winded.
man, thank you so much for being on the show and nothing but the best, man. And enjoy the rest of your weekend and the festival tomorrow.
Thanks, and thanks for inviting me. And
No
anytime
problem.
if you want to do part two, I'll be up for it.
Okay, awesome. Bye bye now.
Bye.